It's always great to be with you on Insight Live, and tonight we're going to have a fantastic program. But hold on, we always have fantastic programs. But this, I've chosen the title, More Than Conquerors, but we always approach it from a different angle. You should know us well enough by now. And Melanie, great to have you.
It is a very good title, and I think you're in for a surprise, a very, very incredible story that we are going to expose you to, and it's going to be so encouraging. Thanks for joining us here on Insight Live Tuesday night, and I have my tablet waiting for your emails and SMSs. We're looking forward to some great Revelation TV family interaction. And, our guests have an incredible story. But Kurt, when you're talking about more than an overcomer, there are so many testimonies out there where God has just interacted with people's lives, and it's just turned out to be the most incredible testimony.
Yeah. But I think, a lot of times when, that title, More Than Conquerors, I mean, we've all heard those sermons where somebody gets up there and says, you're not the tail, you're the head, you're more than a conqueror. And we forget that it's plural, it's not just us alone, it's we plural together. We're more than conquerors. It takes a community. If you've had an accident like our guest did, for example, they had a strong community. And it's not just individually that we're more than conquerors, but all together. But there's an individual aspect to it. I was reading an article, a book, a few years ago, and it told a story about this guy who was living with his girlfriend for years, and he was happy, at least. I don't know if she was happy, but she wasn't, because she said, I'm out of this relationship, I don't love you anymore, I'm off to Bali. So off she went to, Southeast Asia, to Bali. And his life just went downhill after that. I mean, he didn't look after himself, he was putting on weight, the house was a mess, he didn't get the promotion, he lost his job, and, using, substance abuse, etc. And just for 4 months, he was going completely downhill. And then he got that call. And his ex-girlfriend said to him, you know what? I finally realize I love you. I'm going to come back in 3 weeks. It just took a second, because it says that we're more than conquerors through him who loved us. You see, we're more than conquerors, yes, through him who loved us. And when he felt that love, and when he knew he was deeply loved by his ex-girlfriend, suddenly he was dancing around that.
Life returned.
Life returned. He was yelling, he was calling his friends, he got his job back, he got his life together, all in a space of 3 weeks, because he was more than a conqueror through him who loved him.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the key. And I've never heard a message on that.
So you're saying that when we're deeply loved, we're able to do things that we wouldn't do if we didn't know it was so loved.
Hey, when I first met you, I announced to the whole seminary that I was studying in, I'm in love. Honestly, I told it to all the student body at assemblies, I'm in love, I've met somebody. And literally, I felt that I could conquer the world. Mm-hmm. More than a conqueror through her who loved me.
Well, our story that we have tonight, and the couple that we actually are interviewing a couple tonight, which is lovely, and their names are Chris and Denise Arthey, and they've written a book called Highway 35: Meeting Disaster Head On with Hope.
And I guess we'll let them tell us what.
Oh yeah, they're definitely going to be telling us about the book. So shall we invite them in?
Yeah, let's invite them right now.
We're going to invite them right in now to join us, and you are very welcome to interact with them, to ask them questions, to find out their story from your perspective, or whatever angle you have questions. So please feel free to write in during the program, and keeping it on topic, please. Okay, thanks so much for that. So there they are. A huge welcome to you. Chris and Denise, welcome to Insight Live. A huge welcome from our Revelation TV family. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us tonight.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, good. You are so welcome. Give us a wave. Give us a hello. That's wonderful. Welcome, welcome. Kurt, you had a question.
Well, I do have a question. I mean, you wrote a book called Highway 35, and I know that highway because, my sister lives in Texas, and something very disastrous happened in that. I mean, it's called Highway 35, meeting disaster head on with hope. I know the story, but perhaps most of our viewers don't. But what is your story behind this book, and why did you write it now?
Well, let me explain why Highway 35. Obviously, we're not Texans; we're British. We were on a work assignment to Texas, and I'd always had this dream of riding motorcycle road trips across the US, and this assignment was my chance. So we were on a road trip, riding a Harley Davidson Road King. Riding from Houston down towards the Mexico border, and Corpus Christi was our destination. And at 2:34 p.m. On a weekday, we were on a dead straight highway, and that's where the accident happened. And in summary, I was riding 55 miles an hour. Denise was on the pillion. We'd just been overtaken by an F-150 truck. So now I'm looking at the back of a Ford F-150 truck, and that's all I can see. The truck driver noticed a red SUV coming at him at high speed on the wrong side of the road. So he thought, is he asleep at the wheel? Is he going to get back onto his own lane? He's not. So at the last moment, the truck driver drove off the road. Now I can see the red SUV. He's doing 80 miles an hour. I'm doing 55, closing speed of 135 miles an hour, which is 60 meters a second. And he hit us virtually head on. And he then hit another truck behind us, and almost killed the driver of that truck and seriously injured his wife. So there were a few seconds of complete mayhem. So that was the accident. Perhaps, Denise, you could tell us what happened next.
Yeah, well, the truck driver said that Chris would have had less than half a second to react. And we were both, as you can imagine, seriously injured. So we went in his and hers helicopters to the nearest trauma hospital. And we both had severely crushed left legs. Mine couldn't be saved. It had to be amputated straight away. We both had broken left arms and hands. My arm was degloved. I lost a lot of skin. We both landed on our heads, so we both had concussion. Chris's was a lot worse than mine. And because Chris was at the front of the bike, he had... broken ribs, ruptured spleen,
punctured lung.
And punctured lung. Yeah. And Chris was in ICU for at least 2 weeks, and I was in ICU for a few days. There he is in ICU. And at 10 days, our youngsters had flown out by then, and the doctors came to us and asked us, Ben and I, Ben was only 25, asked us if we could sign for Chris's amputation. So that was a dreadful night, trying to sleep, worrying if he'd get through the operation, and if he did, whether he'd agree with the decision. But that was the start of his recovery. And then, of course, we faced lots of rehabilitation. And we also got new prosthetic legs and had to learn to walk again.
So you both lost a leg, and it was the left leg, both of you?
Yeah, left leg above the knee.
Above the knee. Wow. Yeah, Kurt was, and I was saying, was it below or above the knee? Wow.
So when you had the accident, I remember having a bicycle accident, and a woman pulled out. I was going very fast, and I was also thrown up in the air several flips later. And then I didn't remember any, I just remembered that. And then I woke up in the back of an ambulance. Obviously, I was unconscious for probably half an hour. How long were you unconscious for?
Well, I was in the medically induced coma for 10 days, and it took a long while to come out of that. And
wow.
neither of us have any memory of the accident, which is probably a good thing. And I lost the day before, well, a couple of days before the accident. That memory has completely wiped. Denise, you remember a little more?
Yes, I remember most of the journey up to the accident. Don't remember the accident, which, as Chris says, is a good thing. I've just got a distinct memory of just some very hazy ambulance workers' faces over me, but I don't remember much. And that was on the Friday. By the Sunday, when the pastor visited with some of the church, I was able to talk to them. So I was very forgetful, but I was obviously very conscious then.
Absolutely amazing. So, when we spoke to you, when we spoke to you a week or so ago, there was a huge, I suppose, emotional thing going on for you, Denise, with Chris, being in the coma, being worse off because of his head trauma. And then how was that for you? And then, Chris, we'd really like to hear about your therapy. And I mean, you had to learn to talk. Just tell us a little bit about that and what was going on emotionally especially for you, Denise, because you were aware. And, Chris was, still under.
Yes, well, I mean, for me personally, about my own injuries, first of all, I mean, I remember coming round in hospital and I remember it's like they'd already told me. I knew I'd lost my leg, but it was the shock, actually, of just looking at black bedclothes on the left-hand side. And I'd obviously got my arm in a sling and I couldn't move and I was in a lot of pain. As I said, the youngsters came out. Ben was 25 at the time, Tom was 22, Miriam was 18. But I don't know, somehow you're always mum, aren't you? And you don't want to burden them with your emotions and how you feel. Chris's older brother came out, which was very useful, Roger, because I could actually talk to him. And I think the other thing that was going on, it wasn't just my recovery, but it was, we were in a strange country, with different medical insurance and treatments. And so that was very difficult. And I didn't really know how bad Chris was. The pastor and the men in the church, they came to visit, and the pastor was very gracious when I asked him, I have lost my leg, haven't I? Because I think that was probably the hardest question he's ever been asked almost. And he reassured me. But yes, it was difficult. And I think even after Chris came round, after the amputation, it was the brain trauma really that was most worrying. I mean, he can tell you a bit about that. But I think, one of the phrases that will stick in my head forever is one of our caseworkers said, you may not get your husband back as you remember him. And we've always done things together and Chris has taken the lead. And there was no Chris to communicate with either about, what was going to happen and what we were going to do, how things were going.
Yeah. Yeah, my experience was quite different because of the coma. It took a while to emerge, and I emerged into a world of pain, and because of the head injury and medication, a lot of confusion, and I was very frightened. I had it in my mind that if only I could get out of the hospital, then the pain would stop. So I tried to walk away from the bed. I was connected to various pieces of equipment. So I hit the ground and brought various pieces of equipment down to the ground with me. And it was at that point when they lifted me back into the bed and took the dressings off to see what damage I'd caused. Then I could see that my left leg ended just above the knee with this horrible wound, and that's when it really sunk in that, gosh, I'm horribly injured, and I knew that Denise was horribly injured as well, because we were in separate wards for so long. I missed Denise terribly. But that phase passed.
What did you do with, I was talking to a male nurse a while ago, and he worked in like a pain clinic, and he would have a lot of male patients, who were sportsmen and so on, and suddenly they find themselves disabled, they're on medication, they've just lost their identity, everything they've identified with. How was that for you?
Well, that is so true. There were three aspects of my self-identity that I had lost. I mean, one was, although I like to think of myself as fairly adventurous, and I also thought of myself as competent and careful. And although I've ridden motorbikes all my life, I'd never had an accident. So my competence and my care, I'd blown it spectacularly, because Denise was on the pillion when it happened. So I'd lost that. I also had this self-identity of being competent at work. I worked for a company with lots of other engineers and managers who were really, really sharp. And I like to think I was holding my own with those. And but now I could barely feed myself. I was dribbling food. And as part of my early therapy, I was given children's puzzles to do, and the children's puzzles were defeating me. And another aspect was that I loved endurance sports. I was a marathon runner, and now obviously I was permanently disabled. So those three things together meant that all the things that I felt identified me had been stripped away. And I really had to remind myself that my worth does not reside in what I can achieve. My worth resides in who I am. And I had to lean into my faith and remind myself that, I'm still a child of God. I'm known and I'm loved and I'm okay. And that was a real choice to focus on that.
I think that phrase, where it talks about, I know that was very important for you, where it says, some people say all things work together for those, but it's not. I think it's more God working in, things that are evil, that are tragic, that are good, and he somehow works through and in these things for those who love him. What is your experience, Denise and Chris? Why don't we hear from you, Denise, about that?
Well, that was the verse that I had a lot of verses that God gave me at the time, and that was the verse that I hung on to, and I actually, I managed eventually, after about 6 attempts, to write it. So I was heavily under the morphine, and I got Pastor Frankie to actually read it over Chris and pin it up in his ward, because I felt that needed to be declared in that room. So that was one thing. The other thing that I find is amazing is how God sends you things to help you with hope and build you up. And because I was a teacher, I mean, we got loads of cards, as you can imagine, from all across the world, really. And because I was a teacher, I got cards from the children I'd worked with. And the kindergarten where I was volunteering in America, the children were 5 and 6. So they'd made cards, and they'd obviously copied what the teacher had put on the board, like, we miss you, get better soon. But one little girl, and it just touched me so much, when I opened her card, she had written, "Do you see a rainbow?"
Oh.
And she'd drawn this beautiful rainbow. And it was just like God saying, see, hope, it's going to be okay. I'm going to get you through this. I promise, It was a God.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. One thing that perhaps some of the viewers are probably trying to ask, or perhaps might be thinking, if I'm thinking it, is, when did you know it was going to be all right? You've spoken about, Chris, about being a marathon runner and your dreams and things. When did you know that it was going to be all right? And for you, Denise, as well, and I have some other questions for you, Denise, but just that one question, I'm thinking, maybe our viewers are thinking, what was the transition point? Was it in your spirit? Was it in your mind? Was it in your physical feeling? What where was that transition where you knew that you were going to live and you were going to be okay?
That gave you the most hope.
Yeah.
I think I have secret weapon really. It's my grandfather. My grandfather was an amputee. So I knew quite early on that it was possible to live a normal life again. I mean, he didn't have a modern prosthetic. A bit like a tin leg, really, you know, that with leather straps, and it didn't bend when he walked, but it bent when he sat down. But he was so full of life and so full of fun. I was his only grandchild, but, you know, he would hop down the beach and turn upside down in the water and be a for me, you know, with his leg going past. I mean, it was just normal in my childhood. So I wasn't as devastated as Chris in that sense. I knew that it could be okay. I just had to work through all the treatments and all the therapy. I think my biggest worry was Chris. You know, was Chris going to get back to normal, especially his brain? You know, was that going to resolve itself?
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Again, we're such different people, and my experience was there wasn't a moment when I knew everything was going to be okay. There were moments which were totally bleak, as I've described, and there were other moments when I was choosing to have faith and it will be okay. And those moments, I flopped between them. So I had bleak spells and I had less bleak spells. And over time, the bleak spells have become less and less. It's still jolly convenient having one leg, but the good time have become more prevalent.
I think the arm therapy actually was the thing that was perhaps the hardest to cope with in a way, because it was very painful, and we saw very little progress with a fist or actually turning our hands in supination, pronation, which makes it very difficult to do things. But, you know, in a sense, we learned to put faith in our therapists. You know, they were saying they had faith, it was going to come back, it was going to come. And you really have to not worry about how far you've got to go, but just look at how far you've come. Look what you've managed to achieve today. You know, even if it's only getting one finger down to the palm of your hand, you know, that was an achievement. And
there was a great piece of advice we had once. It was actually in the context of parenting, but we were reminded of it during our therapy, and it was the phrase, "Don't count the score at half time."
Very good.
I'll always remember that.
Yeah. There's everything to play for. It's not over yet.
And we did get it all back. I mean, with surgeries and the therapy, we got it all back. So.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to kind of interrupt us because we do have a few emails coming in. Just want to do some greeting. A kiss to you. Dylan, thanks very much for joining us and for your greetings as well. And Dylan, thanks for greeting Chris and Denise. I know you're enjoying their story, and I know that their story is encouraging you. There are a couple of others here. Chandra Kumar, thank you very much for your greeting, and always love hearing from you. Please do write in if you have some questions for Chris and Denise. Perhaps I'm sure they won't feel awkward. They've done lots of interviews and things, and I think they'd be very happy to hear from you and what your questions are. I was thinking about asking Denise, from a woman's perspective, Denise, you know, women are, you know, we like to be glamorous, we like to look nice. You know, there's something about being a woman that's just only women really understand. And then to actually have such a traumatic damage or change to your body image, how did you cope with that? And how are you coping now?
It's better now, and I'll tell you why later. But it was very difficult at the beginning, especially when I got a new prosthetic leg. I mean, very exciting. Standing up after months in a wheelchair. It was wonderful. It was incredibly emotional. But I had a very simple mechanical leg with just a sort of a silver pole. And
You hated it.
I was so self-conscious about this. I really was. I walked very slowly and obviously with a limp. But I was sort of confined to wearing trainers all the time because you couldn't really have a heel of any sort. And I know that I used to actually, when we had a nap at lunchtime, I used to lie on the sofa and I would actually cross my good leg over the stick because I just couldn't bear to see it. I just wanted to sort of remember my leg as it was. So I struggled with that. Then we got microprocessor knees, which it's a bit more shaped like a leg, but it's still sort of black metal. And I said to the prosthetist, is there anything you can do? I want a leg that looks like a leg. And bless them, yes, they did that. They put a cosmesis on, a pink cosmesis. And that was incredible. That was the start. And then I learned that, you know, I've now got a hydraulic foot, ankle, which means that I can actually wear slight heel. I mean, I do miss high heels, but a slight heel. So I can wear, you know, I can wear skirts and I can wear a dress and have a nice pair of sandals and shoes and boots. So it's a lot easier now, but I still don't, I still like to have a leg that people, I like to, for people to treat me as Denise and then suddenly ask, oh, you're limping, you know, and then it comes out that you're an amputee. I don't like to sort of, it doesn't bother Chris to go with his sort of Terminator leg, you know, but I like it to be hidden. I don't like that to be the first thing that people see when I walk into the room. So it's been a journey, but I think I'm okay now. I mean, yeah, it's great. I mean, my cosmesis, I can paint my toenails if I want to. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah. I didn't know that you could paint your toenails. Oh my goodness. But I think the advancement in technology has really come a long way. And, you know, it's very encouraging to hear that you've got a leg that, you know, isn't the first thing that people will look at, you know, when they see you. And so that's nice. You know, I think sometimes having that as the focus of attention can actually kind of distract from just ordinary conversations, ordinary encounters with people. How do you, well, maybe Chris, I can ask you, how do you find that? Because if you're wearing the one that looks bionic, how do you deal with that? Do you enjoy that
People
attention?
will say he's like a universal soldier or something like that, you know.
How do you feel?
I have to say it really doesn't bother me, and if people want to ask questions about the leg, then I'm quite happy to answer them. I was at the running track yesterday morning, and there were a group of 7- and 8-year-olds who were on a sports camp, and they came over and wanted to talk about the blade leg I was running on, and we had a great chat for 10 minutes or so, and yeah, it really doesn't bother me, but I understand exactly where Denise is coming from because she's very different. I mean, she's a lady, and also, yeah, we're all individuals. And I have to say that Denise is an incredibly special person, and the way that she's coped with what is a horrible disfigurement is just, oh, I'm blown away. She's marvelous.
But I see you guys, we were talking earlier, both of you are extremely competitive. And to be competitive, I like that verse in Hebrews where it says, you know, keep your focus on Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. And it says the race that is marked out for us, you know. And I'm looking at your life after the accident, and I'm just looking at things like you went on to another posting in the Middle East, you built a career in the prosthetics industry, but also Everest Base Camp, Mount Kilimanjaro, and you got a master's degree. I mean, you went from like barely being able to do a children's puzzle to a master's degree. So you must have this like competitive edge. There must, you know, what keeps you going? What are some of your new markers along the race?
Well, the first thing to say is it's just a complete miracle because none of these things should be possible. But on being competitive, I think that having an endurance sports background meant that I'm used to pushing myself, used to setting goals and seeing if I can achieve them. And being an amputee, that certainly helped with the therapy and the recovery. But it's also made me curious as to, well, what can be achieved as, well, now a 67-year-old amputee involved in endurance athletics. And it's brilliant. It's great.
So what are some of your future goals?
Well, big one this year is that I'm training for a half Ironman, with a triathlon, which it's a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike ride, then a 13 mile run. Now, I've done lots of triathlons, but I haven't done. I've done Olympic distance, but I haven't done a half Ironman yet. And I may not be able to achieve it because it's a tall order given my condition, but it would be brilliant to have a go. So that's coming up in October. A week ago, I was in the British Para-Triathlon Championships for the third time. And for the second year in a row, I was national champion in the severe leg impairment category. Now, I have to say that this year I was first out of one because there aren't many of us. But you have to be in it to win it. And I love training and racing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I just want to go to one of our viewers who's written in commenting. Chandra Kumar, thank you so much for writing in. You say, hi, Chris and Denise. You are fighters and you did not give up from recovering from a serious injury. You did not lose your faith in God, which I like. I think you've got a lot more things to give to the world. And then he asks you, do you agree? I would actually ask you the same question as Chandra Kumar. How do you feel your influence is at this time and over these last years as you've been sharing your testimony? What kind of fruit are you seeing from your testimony and your story?
I'll start that one. It was interesting, actually. It was quite early on when we were at home recovering. We had a bad day, and usually we can pull each other up, but this particular day we couldn't. So we phoned the pastor. I mean, the pastor was only 30 at the time. He was incredible, and he dropped everything, came round, and he listened. And he said, he just dropped this pearl, and he said, you at the moment are going through the blood, the sweat, the toil, the tears. You know, you are building a platform for ministry. And we looked at Corinthians together where it talks about, receiving God's comfort. But you're meant to use that comfort to comfort others. And that's really what's propelled us into our books and writing the book. We want to comfort others because we've learned such a lot going through this. We don't have all the answers, and it's not a how-to book. But, we just want to share what we found out going through the valley of this journey. And yes, we found a lot of fruit. We found a lot of people have been encouraged. We've had some lovely reviews from the book as well. And I think it's just, it just is a way of sharing hope, which so many people need, especially at this time.
Yeah, we obviously we've done a lot of speaking over the years about, well, what happened to these two people and what can we learn from it? And so we were encouraged to write the book. And I think we can encapsulate it by saying that, yeah, we know that life doesn't always go to plan and there are bumps in the road. Jesus himself said, in this world you will have trouble. But then he says, take heart, I've overcome the world. So it's, and we know that people have things that happen to them that are far worse than what happened to us. And we're very blessed by what we've been able to achieve. But it's our prayer that when we speak and when people read the book, that they will look at the things, their own bumps in the road, their own disasters, and that they will be able to face them head on with hope, as the Lord has helped us to face our disaster with hope.
Yeah, I think what the pastor was trying to say to us was that, you are going through all this, you're on a platform, and people will listen to you in a way that they probably won't listen to perhaps other people, because you've been through something. You've actually come through, you've learnt things, you persevered, you've made good choices, and that good that we were talking about in that Bible verse, we've been able to see it as a fruit in our own lives, and we can share that with others. And I think that's really what we've learned, and that's what we want to do.
Denise, I just feeling there's a moment here that we can actually minister to the viewers. I was just thinking, perhaps start with you, Denise, that, there are people who are watching now and maybe will watch on catch up or some other time that really have very difficult ongoing situations where, whether it's illness or whether it's, just really feeling down because there's been a relational or family breakups. There's so many scenarios that are representative, in just the average person watching a program like this. I'm wondering, Denise, if you have some encouraging words and perhaps even a prayer that you could just pray over some of those who are actually feeling like, well, you got over it, but I'm not seeing a way through.
Yeah, I will pray, but first of all, one of the encouragements that we had was in hospital. They introduced us to quite a few amputees, and to actually have someone alongside who is further along the journey, but experiencing the same sort of thing that you're going through, whether it's a loss, whether it's grief, whether it's a long-term illness, was just incredible. To find someone who is, who has, if you like, gone through it and can share with you and for you and support you. But yes, I pray for people. Father, I just ask you now to be with anyone who is struggling with trauma at the moment, some kind of trauma, whether it's loss, whatever it is, whether it's in their body or whether it's in emotions or whether it's in the spirit. Lord Jesus, ask you that your presence will be very real, that they will feel Father's hug around them, feel the arms carrying them. Lord, I just ask that you will give them scripture, you will give this from your word. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much.
One thing I'm thinking of, I started out with that verse that we're more than conquerors. And I think that we have to conquer a kind of our inner situation as well. And so I'm thinking right now of the guy who was driving a car. He was drunk, he was intoxicated. Was it difficult to conquer for unforgiveness?
Yeah, it's really interesting. There was, as you say, he was intoxicated. He was over 3 times the drink drive limit at 2:30 on a weekday, and then a year later there was a trial. He pled guilty, and it was a sentencing trial to determine what the appropriate punishment was. To our surprise, he was given basically 10 years probation. It was a surprise. We prayed beforehand, and we couldn't really and then say that the Lord got an answer. But the trial, he asked if he could speak to us, and he came over with tears in his eyes, said, "Is it possible for you to forgive me?"
Wow.
And we got this beforehand, and they're on no bitter. And that surprised us. It surprised a lot of us as well. And it's not as we're good Christians and we know the Lord's Prayer, we forgive us, we forgive others. It was almost as if and God took any bitterness, he had enough on us without carrying the chain of bitterness. So the forgiveness, it just flowed.
That's just such a beautiful testimony of, of your response as well. I mean, I'm not so sure everybody would have the same kind of response, but I think that allows you to be free, from, just, I suppose, the feelings and the things that the enemy would want you to hold on to that actually would rob you more and more. So it's such a great testimony. If I could just go to a couple of comments from our viewers we have here. Brian, thank you so much for writing in, and the title is Chris and Denise. Kurt and Melanie, our friend, was an amputee but suffered from awful phantom pains. And so Brian is asking you, Denise and Chris, are you affected at all by such pains?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have worse phantom pains than Chris. I think because Chris's leg was sort of surgically amputated, whereas mine was very much affected in the, it was sort of ripped in the accident. Yes, it was very, very bad at the beginning, and they gave me sort of, nerve pills and things, and we tried some mirror therapy and things. Yes, pain is perhaps the wrong word. We do get occasional shooting pains, but most of the time, like I'm sitting now and my leg is fizzing. I've got pins and needles in my foot, and it's like that most of the time. And during the day, it's fine because I'm doing things, I'm too busy. But in the evening, when you go to bed, because I'm not on medication now, it just takes a while for that to calm down, and then I can get to sleep. But yes, it is a problem, and I'm just glad I don't have my grandfather's problem, because his leg used to itch. Now that must be terrible because you can't scratch it. But yes, it is a problem. Some amputees, it disappears. Some amputees, it stays. I know my grandfather had it all the time. So there are things you can do, and it's worth talking to a physio about it.
So they haven't found anything where they could actually do something in the brain to kind of stop that? Technology and medicine has just moved so far on with laser surgery and things like that. Is there anything even close in research, would you know?
Well, I think the best thing at the moment, it seems to be the mirror therapy, which is where you obviously put your good leg or good hand or whatever into either a mirror box or against a very long mirror, and you move that leg around, and it tricks the brain into thinking you've got two legs and that leg's fine, and then the sensations just calm down. But it's interesting because if my leg is in the position that it would have been bent on a motorbike, that's when I get very bad phantom pain. It's almost like the brain is remembering the pain of the actual accident.
Wow, that's incredible. We have one more here from TJ. So TJ says, what is truth? He says, love your talks. Can I ask Chris and Denise, how important is truth in their life in dealing with all the problems in life and with God? God bless TJ. TJ, I think this is a big, big question, and I'm wondering what kind of answer you are requiring from the Lord. But I do believe that Denise and Chris will sense what the Holy Spirit is trying to say. So basically, he's asking, how important is the truth in your lives in dealing with all the problems in life and with God?
Wow.
Yeah, I think I could answer that by saying that when we wrote the book, Highway 35, it was really important to us to be as truthful as possible, to get the facts right and to relate the story as it was, and also be truthful about how awful it was, because it's only by being truthful, honest and raw and vulnerable that we can help people who were in a who are going through a tough time. So in that respect, truth is very, very important to us.
Good. That's a very, very good answer. Good answer. Because God is watching. God. We have this responsibility to be, who He has created us to be and who Jesus died for us to be. We can't be faking it or living a double life.
But on the other hand, think of it, that would discourage, think if they wrote their book, oh, God was with us at all times, we were just filled with joy, etc. Think how harmful that would be to somebody
Yes.
who was also an amputee, and they would say, well, I don't feel like that, they must be some super Christians. And I think so many of us, even as pastors, will do this. We're not truthful in our presentation. We'll kind of gloss over the hard parts of our lives and just concentrate on the more than conquerors part. But we're more than conquerors, hopefully, because we have something to conquer. And I think we have to be truthful as Christians about when we give our testimony and so on, to include some of the nitty and gritty stuff as well, and not kind of, make it for Hollywood.
So let's talk more about the book. Our viewers, why would they want to buy the book? What for the average person? It's a dramatic story. What do you think that they would receive or that they would glean from reading your story and how the way that you've done it?
It's been really interesting, actually, reading the reviews.
Yeah.
Because 2 people have written about our marriage, what they got from just the way we responded to each other and the way we were so different but went through it together. So that was a strange one for us. But I think it is the encouragement. It's the hopefully that they can see that, like Kurt said, it's we are raw and we are honest and we are open about it. And, we talk about how horrible it was as well. And that, we had to take step by step by step as God directed us. And He sort of slowly weaved it back together for us. And I think it's, it is a journey of hope. It's a good read. It's an enjoyable read, but it's a good read, apparently. My cousin hasn't read a book from cover to cover, apparently, since he got married. And he's been married over 44 years. So he's, and he said, it was so easy to read. I think one of our hopes is that it might answer some of the questions that perhaps people have, but it's not a how-to book, but it might reassure them, as you're saying, that you can be honest with the Lord. I remember lying in hospital, feeling incredibly sad and just saying, you gave me this fantastic body and now look at it, and I'm so sorry. And I was just met with, Jesus sort of weeping alongside me. It was love and it was incredible sorrow as well, at the injustice of what I'd gone through. And it was just incredible. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was just feeling sort of very sorry for myself, I think. But, I think we've got to be real. And I think the book is real. And I think you will see where we found our hope, in Scripture, but in our conversations with the Lord as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, why don't we talk about where we're going to get the book, where they can access it. How about that? I've got a website here, chrisarthey.co.uk. Is that where they can contact you if they'd like to? Do you do a signed book, or what are you offering?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we haven't worked with the publisher to get any signed books out, but if there's an idea, I'll email them tomorrow. Now, if you go to our website, there's a book web page in there which links to the publisher's website, and there you can read the endorsements, the foreword, and the first chapter as a preview, and then decide if you want to place an order, and you can do that through the website. There are also a couple of videos about the book as well, and there's a video about our story, which might help fill in a bit more detail for people who are interested. But yeah, just go to the website and you can find it there. That will be our recommendation.
Great. So that is www.chrisarthey.co.uk. I think it's on your screen. I'm not quite sure because I can't see it.
It's there.
But there we go. Highway 35, meeting disaster head on with hope. And what a story, Kurt. We're kind of closing a little bit now.
Yeah, but I'm coming out of this encouraged. I think it's an excellent book to read. It just gives me hope, Melanie. It's just, look, I'm saying he's got a master's degree or something, and so many of my friends and so on making excuses why they can't do it, and Chris did it.
Yeah.
And I think and another thing that really stands out for me is their marriage, how they've done this together.
That really
it's unusual. Usually you hear of like a husband who has an accident or the wife has an accident, but I think it just helps us just kind of with the nitty-gritty details. And look, we live in a fallen world. It's tough, but we have a very good Father that takes us by the hand and guides us. And I was just thinking of when we were in Africa. We were in some very dangerous parts of Africa, and if we didn't have a guide, we would have been eaten up by the lions. So this is what I think of Jesus. He's the life, the way, the truth, and no matter what we go through, he's there to lead us through it.
That's right. So we want to just thank you so much, Chris and Denise, for taking time to be with us. On behalf of the audience tonight, the Revelation TV family, I'm sure they are extremely grateful that you've been vulnerable, you've been honest, and that you actually wrote this book so that other people can be encouraged. So we just bless you right now. We bless your ministry. We bless your road ahead and all the people that are going to be touched by your ministry. So thank you once again, and we want to thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris and Denise. Wow, thank you. Wow.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Wow. So, Kurt, I remember when I was 14 and I had a serious car accident, a compound fracture of the femur, 7 weeks on traction, then I get out and I fall and my knee breaks, and I'm now 7 more weeks in the hospital and then 7 weeks or whatever in a wheelchair. And missed so much school and everything. And I'm just listening to their story is just so encouraging, because I didn't lose my leg. I had to learn to walk again. Just the tenacity of just grabbing hold of life again. So we just really want to encourage you. If you are really battling either physically or emotionally tonight, we just pray we speak a blessing over you that you will overcome this, that there is hope. And if you are able to get the book, Chris and Denise's book, get the book, read the story, and allow the Holy Spirit to encourage you in your circumstance.
But it's one of these books where you can see that God works through all things. What if the scripture said that God only works through the good things for those who love him, or the bad things, but he said all things? And just to see how God worked in and through that, ugly circumstances, but all things. He works in and through all things for those who love him. And I think that's an amazing testimony and very encouraging.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really picked up is it was step by step by step. And it's like when you are in pain, that one step feels like the end of the world because you're in so much pain. But the step by step led to the rehabilitation, led to them having freedom to be able to move around, and for Chris to be able to do triathlons and things.
Don't despise the first small step. Journey begins with one step. We've all heard that before.
So let us encourage you to trust and to just hear the Holy Spirit and to go for that healing and that deliverance and that the freedom that Jesus came. Jesus came to set you free. So don't sabotage your own freedom, no matter what your situation is. Thank you for being with us tonight, Kurt.
Look, it's always great to be with you, and it's great. Thank you for your participation, your emails, and remember that God works in all things for those who love him. It's been wonderful to be with you, and we will see you next week. God bless you. Bye.